Hey, and welcome to the Neurodivergent Musician Podcast, where I explore the world of neurodiversity and musicianship. I'm your host, John Hart, along with Luna, my guitar, and today I'll be talking about Hyperfocus. Each episode is broken up into a traffic format where I'll share insights in the red section, improvised babble in the amber, and recommendations you might find handy in the green. So let's head on into the red section for more insights. All right, let's break it down. Hyperfocus is a mind-blowing phenomenon that hits us neurodivergent folks, especially those with ADHD or autism. It's like putting on your focus goggles and diving headfirst into a task or activity. Nothing else matters, time stands still, and you're in the zone. It's like pure magic. But hold up, there's some science behind this wizardry. Hyperfocus is all about our brain's attention game. The executive functions, those fancy control systems in our noggin, kick into high gear during hyperfocus. They help us zero in on one thing and give it our all. It's like a superhero power for us neurodivergent musicians. But here's the kicker though. Hyperfocus is linked to some chemical wizardry too. Neurotransmitters like dopamine get in on the action. They're the brain's way of saying, hey, this is awesome, keep going. So during hyperfocus, our dopamine levels go through the roof, leaving us feeling super engaged and satisfied with our work. It can be a total rush. And you know what else? Psychologists call hyperfocus an optimal experience or flow. It's when you're completely absorbed in what you're doing and time slips away. It's like being in a parallel universe where the only thing that matters is the music or whatever you're working on. And let me tell you, the feeling of joy and fulfillment can be pure gold. But let's get real. Hyperfocus isn't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a double-edged sword. Sure, it lets us tap into our creativity and push our musical boundaries, but it can also make it tough to switch gears and handle other life stuff. Finding that sweet balance is the key. So how do we tame the hyperfocus beast? Well, first off, you got to know your triggers. Figure out what gets you in that hyperfocus groove as a musician. Once you've cracked the code, you can structure your practice sessions and creative time to make the most of it. Oh, and don't forget about setting some boundaries. Yeah, I know it's hard to tear yourself away from the hyperfocus state, but trust me, taking breaks is vital. Set some clear time limits, schedule intentional breaks, and find that healthy middle ground. Your overall well-being is just as important as your music, remember that. And before we wrap up this section, I want you to keep the conversation going. I've created a Facebook group for the Neurodivergent Musician Podcast, where I want you to share your scientific, psychological insights into hyperfocus as a neurodivergent musician. Let's build a community where we can learn from each other's experiences and rock this neurodivergent journey together. And hey, if you want to dive even deeper into all things ADHD and hyperfocus, I recommend checking out the ADHD Adults podcast with James, Alex, and Sam. They're a fantastic crew who go into all types of topics, and they're professors as well. So that is it for the insight section. We're now going to go into the amber. We're going to go into some improvised babble. See you then. Okay, so we're into the amber section. So with hyperfocus, yep, I agree, it's a double-edged sword. And on the positive side of it, I think the thing is with hyperfocus that most of the time you don't even know you're in it. And it's almost like you're transfixed. You're in a trance and or something is kicked in and you're really positive about it, but then time just goes away. And there's time blindness, which I'm going to go into another episode about, but I think that's all connected. And then you get this sort of tunnel vision approach. And in the previous episode, which was the hardest episode, I went through, talking about a mental health crisis and things, that sort of tunnel visioned approach, it's almost like my brain hyper focused on that area. But when it goes into the positive aspect of it, mainly to do with music, or when I'm building a project like a website, or I come up with a business idea and I then go into ChatGPT, or I go into something, I can go into a rabbit hole, and I absolutely love this process. But it can really dent the outside of things, and time slows down for me when I'm in hyperfocus, but for everyone else, they're at normal time. So I think I've been hyperfocusing for like 5 minutes, but then when I come back to reality, I've actually been hyperfocusing for about 20 to 30 minutes. And this can be okay if I'm on my own, or I've sort of carved out some time. But also, with hyperfocus, because we don't know when it's going to kick in, it's really, really hard for people around you, loved ones around you, to know if you're in that state. And then when they want to get a response out of you, or they ask you a question, or they come to you with something, it almost feels like it's a distorted sound, because I'm so focused on whatever I'm working on, or it might be, I'm watching something or whatever it is. Although my brain is most of the time in stereo, when I go into hyperfocus, it goes into mono, and I can't hear anything else around me. And, that could be a dangerous thing, because, if I'm unaware of my surroundings, I don't really know what's going on, and I'm completely transfixed. And I've had times where I'm looking after the kids, and then I've put them, in front of a TV show or something like that. And then I go, okay, cool. I'll go and play my guitar for 5 minutes. Now, my guitar is an invitation to teleporting myself to another world. And I should learn from this, really. But, sometimes going to my guitar is guitar therapy. And I need it at that point, because, parenting, as much, it's a double-edged sword. It's, there are wonderful moments, but it can be exhausting, tiring, sensory overload, social overload, all the others, all the above. And, you need to relax somehow. So when I go to my guitar, it's really hard to explain, but all of the other senses just sort of shut down, and I'm really tunnel visioned onto my guitar. And I think I'm just playing for 5 minutes. And when I stop a piece, or when I stop playing, it's almost like my senses then come back, and then I've come back into normal life. And then all I hear is screaming from the children. My wife's come in angry, or something's happened, and I'm completely unaware because I've hyperfocused. And that's really hard to judge, because I don't know I've gone into that deep hyperfocused. It's almost like Inception, where it's like multiple levels. I've gone down into multiple levels internally, and maybe into my psyche, that I have actually teleported to another world. It's like going into virtual reality. You've seen some of these films and TV programs where they teleport to another world, and their body just, their real life body is just numb, and there's nothing going on, but all their activity is in this other virtual reality world. And that's how I can sort of articulate it, maybe, as a musician, especially if you get to a point where you love what you play and you're not thinking about technique and you're not thinking about those other things. But there can be other areas where you are in the middle of a project, and you'll just kind of go, you'll get this obsessive thought where you go, oh, actually, I just need to go and tweak that. I need to tweak that. I can't go to bed unless I tweak that. And as much as I write it down, or I can cast it aside, I need to get this tweak. But sod's law, I go to my laptop or my computer, I make that tweak, And then that's like the gateway into hyperfocus. And then I'm literally into this mode. And I was just about to go to bed at 10 o'clock. And then I then clock the time and it's 1 a.m. And I'm like, oh shit. I've screwed myself up here, because, you know, I'm going to be getting up tomorrow groggy, and, you know, it's going to have this sort of vicious cycle. And there'll be other times where, you know, I can be in the middle of a conversation with someone, and as soon as I get a thought, my brain will just obsess on that thought, and then it will go into a rabbit hole, and then I would hyper focus on that. And then it comes across as I'm not listening, or I'm not really taking any notice. And that's a muscle that I've got to strengthen over time. But the key thing is that I'm trying to learn when I go into hyperfocus, but more often than not, I'm not aware until after. And this is where I need other people maybe around me to help. But if they see it as a negative, or if they see it as a flaw, then it's not going to get any better. But it's one of those where it's just like, you know, you've gone into hyperfocus again. What was the reason? Why was the reason why I went into hyperfocus? Maybe it's because I feel like I've had a tough day, and I need to do these things, whether it's play my guitar, work on a project, do something like that, to feel like there's a dopamine hit, I'm productive, and all these other things, without me knowing it. And then my brain has gone into complete hyperfocus. There can be other times where, you know, I go and play Lego with my son, or I go and do a computer game, or I go and do some coloring, or do crafting, or I do whatever it is. And again, you know, I could be with my children. It's supposed to be a children's activity, but before I know it, I've completely hyper-focused on it, and I'm obsessed with it. And I've shut out the outer world, and I've gone into this internal world. And I also don't know if that's the introverted side of it. It's like the introvert going, we need some time together right now. And I'm just going to shut your brain off, and you're going to go into hyperfocus. Because I feel I'm an extroverted introvert. So I gravitate towards my guitar because that's what I've done my whole life. But I can be a social butterfly, and I can, you know, be social with people and things. But there are times where I just need a break. And I'm just wondering if that's part of the sort of neurodivergence as well, where the hyperfocus is almost like a signal. It's almost like when you get a pain in your body, that is a signal that something's going on. So when I get sensory overload, I take myself into another room. And the same if I get social overload, I will take myself to the toilet or wherever it is, and I'll stay there. But when I go into hyperfocus, again, I think that is part of those same traits, where it's just my brain's kind of going, right, we're going to go into this now because you're going to shut down because you need to recharge. But it's too early to go to sleep or whatever it is. So we're just going to go into hyperfocus state. And it can wind up a lot of people, it can rub people up the wrong way, because it's just like, why do you get to go in hyperfocus and I don't? And again, those are, I've been learning about recently, you know, to do with thoughts, emotions, feelings, and the negative side of emotions, thoughts and feelings are just thoughts, emotions, or feelings. They're not something that I will react to, and I'm trying not to react to. I want to try and see above that, in the fact that there's a reason behind those negative sort of sides of it. So when I go into hyperfocus and I come out of it, the best thing to do is to be positive about it, as much as it can be real pain in the ass at times. Because if I've gone into hyperfocus and I'm not productive and I've got nothing out of it, and I come out of it and it's caused even more chaos, I'm not meaning to do that. So there are positives and negatives to it. But with, you know, when it comes to music, I've got little tiny riffs, little John-isms on the guitar and vocal. And this particular tuning that I go into, it's, I feel like it's a John tuning. And when I go there, I feel like I'm John Hart. And when I start playing, I am teleported, and I want to stay in that world when I'm into that creative process. And people will go, well, what, you can schedule your time, your creativity, you can schedule your creative time. But, we're all human, and, it depends on our day and depends on how the ebbs and flows of our internal, flux and flow go. I have no idea even if I scheduled in a block to do creative stuff, would I be that productive? Or when I go into hyperfocus and it does work, that's when I get the best out of it. And it can sometimes just be in a different environment, or, my brain just wants to go into that mode. So there is an element you need structure maybe around hyperfocus, and you can do Pomodoro timers, you can do all these other things. But there also needs to be a sense of improvisation and play. And that's really hard for when you've got a family, you've got work, you've got all these other routines. And it's almost like the life of a musician in some ways. Touring musicians, your main job will be to do the gig in the evening. So you have a lot of time during the day. You'll be traveling around, logistics, you'll be having food, you'll be, maybe doing a few promo stuff and things as well. But there will be pockets in the day where you get to have that creative time. And it's very free flow and it's very improvised. But if you go into, the white lines of the way we have society and the way we have, we've got to run our jobs and we've got to run our routine, our schedule and our tasks and our chores and things as well. Hyper-focused, improvised hyper-focus, it's not allowed, and because it goes outside of the structure. And I think that's where there's a real sticking point, because sometimes we can't control it, and sometimes we just got to let it be. And also, there is a time where if there is hyper-focus, you don't know if you're going to get anything out of it at all. It could just be you're hyper focused on something. It's like, actually, you could be hyper focused on an idea, a new business idea, say, and then once you've got all that dopamine and everything as well, an hour later, it could be dead. You've got no passion or feelings for that business idea. So you've just wasted a whole hour. But as much as it feels like it's wasted, maybe it's just the brain's way of saying, you needed that. You needed to zone out for a little bit. Because if we're constantly zoned in all the time, then actually you can go into a state of fight and flight a lot. And especially with the world at the moment, where there's just crises in all different areas, whether it's, the world or, health or finances or housing or whatever it is, there's always something. And the news is like, a fight and flight level on a 24/7 basis. I've never come across a news outlet, a mainstream news outlet, that is just constantly about positive news. I know the world can go to shit, and like it's just fuckery 24/7 in all areas of life. But surely there's got to be that's if we're living on negativity all the time, then it's really hard to try and be productive and to be in that sort of calm and social top level of the polyvagal system. So if you've got top level, you've got calm and social, and then you've got mobilize, which is fight and flight, and then at the bottom, where you freeze. If we're constantly immobilized, those hyper focused states could be a mobilized state, and you're getting nothing out of it. Whereas if I'm like positive and I'm in calm and social, and my body enters into hyper focus, there could be a chance that I get something positive and productive out of it. And this is what I've been finding since the crises, since this internal journey that I've been going on. I wrote some lyrics, and I've said it before, if I can find that internal energy, if I can find that internal gold, then I will have eternal life in some ways, because I can look above all this sort of negativity and try and find positivity in the smallest of things. And it's like, I sort of see hyperfocus as if we start up a fitness routine, and you're like, yeah, and now I've got one day, and I was like, yeah, I did this morning and I felt good. And the next day you just don't do it. And then you beat yourself up and you're like, I didn't do it again. And what I've learned with my fitness is actually I've gone, do you know what? It's fine. I didn't do it today. I'll do it again tomorrow. And it's the same with hyperfocus. It's like, if I come out of it and I've got nothing out of it, that's okay. I might get something out of my hyperfocus sessions tomorrow. And that's the beauty of being able to have hyperfocus. If you don't have it, then you're constantly having to try and find that focused time. Because I feel it's built into me, and it's built into a lot of neurodivergence. We can see it as a negative sometimes, but actually there's a possibility here that hyperfocus, especially if I get an hour of it, an hour's hyperfocus is the equivalent of 4 hours work sometimes. But also, an hour's hyperfocus is an hour lost in life. So I weigh these things up, and I'm like, actually, if I get a great hour, which is equivalent to 4 hours work, that gives me hours in the bank for the week, for when I have an unproductive hour. And I think that's when we then just give ourselves compassion and we don't beat ourselves up about it. It's like, if I drop the ball one day and I haven't been able to do something, or I've forgotten something, or I haven't done my fitness routine or my morning routine, it's okay. It doesn't mean the whole system's broken, doesn't mean everything's shut down. It just means I can try and go again the next day. And then, if there's a whole week, yeah, that can be a bit of, meh, but I like, right, it's fine. I'll go again the next week. What I haven't done with all of this is set a metric or set a goal or anything. All I'm trying to do is do it day by day. And I think, the beauty with hyperfocus is I know it's there. So that's it for my improvised babble there. I'm now going to go into the green section. We're going to go into a recommendation. See you then. Okay, so we're now into the green section, and I'm going to go into a recommendation. And it's really hard. You can try and plan your hyperfocus, but more often than not, it's just going to come out of the blue. And if you do feel that you've gone into hyperfocus and you're on your own, then maybe a Pomodoro timer could work. But the problem is, if you've gone into hyperfocus and you haven't switched it on, that's not going to work. You could have, again, with Pomodoro timers, you could, put on Alexa. But what I would probably the best recommendation is just, if it happens, it happens. And if it pushes other stuff out the way, then yeah, it can be tricky. If your hyperfocus kicks in when you're with children or with other people, maybe something that we've got to discuss with other people. It's just like, look, me going into hyperfocus is inevitable. So if I feel I've done that, and you can discuss this with children, you can discuss this with your partner or with a family, and you can go, look, if I go into this zone, then please go and do X, Y, Z. So it could be, for children, it could be, go and watch the TV, go and play this game, go and do this, because the hyperfocus could last for 20 to 30 minutes. If it's a partner, then what they could do, if they can see past the negative side of it, if they can see that this is really, really important and this is vital because I feel it's my body's way of telling me that I've got to stop and recharge. And if I don't go into this, then I will crash at one point. And yes, it can be a pain. Yes, it can be a nuisance because there could be certain things that's planned. But if there's love and compassion, then, you know, maybe partner or loved ones can set a timer or an alarm or something, you know, actually touching the person so can have a real effect. Because I don't think with sensory sometimes, especially with, you know, hearing or seeing, I feel like those senses go when I'm in hyperfocus. But touch can be really different. So I sort of feel maybe a gentle squeeze. If there's a pinch or there is a scratch or something like that, that can really jolt, and then there'll be negative response. But if there's a physical sensation like a squeeze, a cuddle, a touch on the arm or whatever it is, that could make a difference. But I think it's just worth trial and error. You know, if it's children, they could try and give you a cuddle and try and distract you from what you're doing. But the problem is, if you distract someone in their hyperfocus state, you might get a negative response because they're in the middle of something and they are disconnected from the real world. So it might be a touch if there's no response in there, or you feel like you get shut down because that, you know, the neurodivergent in a hyperfocus state has said something. Then leave them and go and do something else. Don't take it personally. And, you know, if when they come out that hyperfocus state, there is love and compassion, then I guarantee they could be more productive. So I think there's a lot of trial and error here. Try lots of different things, whether it's timers, whether it's alarms. Alarms can also be hard because it's almost like one of those old school alarm clocks with bells. And that can be like a siren going off in this other world that I may have teleported to. And it's almost like when you have a dream and then you start hearing the alarm, but you start thinking, I've had dreams before where, you know, I'm dreaming about something and I hear sirens going off and I'm like, oh, they're really loud. But actually it's the alarm clock going off and I'm really disorientated, really disconnected. So it can be touch. It could be a Pomodoro timer. It could be something, or just allow the hyperfocus just to let it go, you know, and it could be 20 to 30 minutes. If it goes after 30 minutes, yeah, you could try something else, but I would just go with trial and error. So that's my very loose episode. I feel like maybe that was all over the place, but maybe that's just, you know, I'm starting to learn lots more about hyperfocus. But I would definitely go and check out the ADHD Adults podcasts and listen to their science, the insights and recommendations there as well. You can obviously go and check out on the internet, lots and lots of information about hyperfocus. And I think the more you learn about this internal journey, you can start to connect and start to go, am I hyperfocusing once a day? Am I hyperfocusing every other day? Am I doing it because I'm tired? Am I doing it because of these triggers? Am I doing it these things? So that's like an internal awareness. And with an awareness journey, don't feel you need to go into change. Go on an awareness journey first, and then look to like, how can I make little tweaks here and there in my life? If you've just gone and done lots of things where there's sensory overload, social overload, you've done a lot of traveling, you've done this and this all throughout the day, there is a chance that your brain's going to either go into overload in some areas, it could go into hyperfocus, it could heighten symptoms basically. So basically clock how much energy you're using and how many things you're doing throughout the day. And then just give yourself love and compassion. Because if you do go into those other things where you need to take yourself to another room, or you've hyper-focused, or there's time blindness, or there's object permanence, or whatever it is, you know, this could happen to anyone with a neurodivergent brain on a daily basis, but it also could be heightened by the things that you've done during the day. So just, you know, be kind to yourself. Ask the people around you to be kind to you as well. The more positive they are, the better it will get. And their acceptance is really important. Accept that you're going to go into hyperfocus. Accept that it might not be productive. For the person around, for the people around you, you know, they need to accept that this is going to happen as well. And for neurotypicals, you know, you could be in the middle of a conversation and then boom, you know, I go out with mates, and when I'm watching a football match, we're having a conversation, but I've tuned into the football match, and I might not actually be looking at the actual football game. It's all the colors, and I've hyper focused on the TV, and then I'm completely disconnected from the conversations. And when I come out of the hyper focus, they're talking about something that I was not even talking about. And I'm like, shit, where am I? So again, it's just, if everyone's aware that this might happen, that it's not quite a butterfly effect where you black out, because you know what you were doing in that hyper focus. But for other people around you, they might feel it's a bit like that, a sort of a very subtle butterfly effect where you've just, you know, you've switched off for half an hour to an hour. And that's fine. That's acceptance. Just accept that. And I think the more we can do that with all these symptoms, you know, internally, externally, then all of those negative feelings, all of that stigma, all of that other stuff can just sort of fly away, and we can just accept for us for who we are. So anyway, that's that was improvised babble as well. So that is it for today's episode. Please head on over to the Neurodivergent Musicians Facebook group and let us know what you think about this episode and all the other episodes. Let us know if you have any suggestions for, you know, themes, titles, and guests that you'd like to have on, and let us know about your experience with hyperfocus. I really want to be able to connect with more neurodivergent musicians going forward. I want to develop some resources and so much more. So you can also head on over to John Hart. You can also head on over to johnhartmusic.com/contact if you want to get in touch with me, or on socials at John Hart Music. But that's it for today's episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Take care. Bye.